Dale is right there. Dale is a great friend to me and a great friend to Paul.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to preface this by saying that I got some big shoes to fill with Rob's elegant and humorous description of Paul's life. I've been in law enforcement for 39 years and used to writing law enforcement type reports, so I hope my little eulogy of Paul doesn't come across as such. I'll try not to. Paul would be exceptionally happy to see that so many of you have come to celebrate his life. I've been a friend of Paul's for the past 36 years, and interestingly enough, it's only been during the time in hospice that I discovered how many people he touched during his life with that curly head and smile of his. As a matter of fact, one of the most interesting things I found out was that he felt actually with so many people that visited him during his time in hospice and in the hospital, he didn't realize how many people's lives he had touched and how many friends he really had. But it took, with all those people, I have to thank you that came to visit him during those times, and it really took away any doubt that he had how many people's lives that he had touched. I'm proud to say I was one of those people. My wife Georgia and I met Paul in the late spring of 1979 when we became neighbors. That's my wife Georgia there. It was shortly thereafter that our oldest daughter Jade was born, and she would later come to know him as Uncle Paul, as would our other two children, Justin and Amber, that followed not long after her. During those early years, Paul and I didn't have much in common. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Richmond, California, but Paul grew up on the east side. I grew up on the west side, on the other side of the railroad tracks. Maybe that's what caused me to go into law enforcement. He was in accounting. Of course, I was in the law enforcement field. He was a competitive softball player and a triathlete. I was into martial arts and diving. However, as fate would have it, in February of 1988, we would eventually end up working in the same agency together. Of course, he in accounting and me on the law enforcement side. And it was during those following 20 years that we became the best of friends. And then I started to look at Paul as the oldest brother or older brother that I never had and wished I had. I convinced him to get him diving, which he did, and together we did many abalone dive trips to the North Coast and eventually dove exotic places such as Micronesia and Cozumel, Fiji. Several years ago, Paul, along with several other of our friends, convinced me to get into cycling, which ultimately led me to join him on the early part of what would turn out to be his last and longest ride of his life, starting from Anacortes, Washington to Portland, Maine. But aside from all the fun times as friends, Paul was also there for my family and I during tough times. He provided support during the passing of my mother and George's mother. And quite frankly, I never thought that I would be doing a eulogy for him today this soon. His passing for me, as was mentioned by John Combs earlier outside, has certainly reinforced the meaning of living life for the moment and love your friends and family like it may be the last time you ever see them. You know, even as old men, as we did when we were younger men, Paul would still joke with me, and we would still joke with each other like we did many years ago. We'd call each other silly names, and one of the things that still sticks in my mind occasionally was that he would always call me a macho prick. Forgive that word. And I suppose his knowledge of me during those younger days, he wasn't too far off base. But I can tell you that during the last few weeks of his life, when I came to visit him at home, he really saw how far from the truth that was. He was actually the macho one that consoled me during my grieving of his impending passing. And it's been a couple of weeks since he's passed, and it's still difficult for me to believe he's gone. There isn't a day that doesn't go by when I still hear him calling me a macho prick. So, Paul, you'll be sorely missed, as I'm sure everybody else in this room